Hi everybody, welcome to today's session. We'll be going through pull technique and general things around the pull as well, not just technique. But we'll quickly just going to watch a video. There's 5 clip type things from this video that I have, which basically go through all of the kind of bits. So this first one is how you should hold it and kind of the grip of it, maybe something that you don't think that much about, but something which could, because it's kind of just like a normal backhand, but well, we'll watch it and we can see if you might find it helpful, or to try out the weekend during the interactive session where we'll be doing some pool practice stuff. So say if you can't hear this, hopefully because I've shared it, it should be fine. But
you don't want any space between the plastic of the disc and the thenar eminence. So you can take your other hand and twist the disc this way, and that lines the disc up more with your forearm. If you look at how I was holding the disc before, the profile of my throw, if I'm throwing straight at you, the profile, I was holding the disc like this before. So when I threw, this is a little exaggerated, but you can see some of the underside of the disc, and that created an air bounce upon release. So I would throw the disc, there'd be a bit of the bottom edge of the disc showing, and that would cause drag. It would cause the disc to air bounce. And if you look in Rob's critique of my pull, he does mention that. So I'm getting rid of the air bounce by twisting the disc this way in my grip, getting my first index finger knuckle on the edge, grabbing onto the rim of the disc with my other fingers, and yeah, twisting the disc in my grip so there's no more distance between the plastic of the disc and this thenar eminence part of my palm. And now when I wind up my throw, I can wind up perfectly in line with my forearm, and there's going to be a lot less air resistance on that pull than there would have been if the disc had drifted a little bit in my grip like that. Lots more air resistance this way, way less air resistance that way. You're going to get much longer pulls, better glide out of the disc by throwing it like that.
cool, so that's kind of tip 1. Maybe you haven't thought about it, but making sure that the disc is kind of in line with your arm by really pushing it into like your palm, and getting like all of the touchy, your palm touching the disc as possible.
Gave me some really good advice, which has added a ton of snap to my throw, which is to pre-cock the wrist and leave it like that. And I was kind of skeptical at first until I started trying it, and I have noticed dramatically more snap by pre-cocking the wrist and having it like this at all times. It's hard to get my mind around using that, having this wrist pre-cocked in the game, but I can totally understand how it makes sense, because if my wrist is always pre-cocked, the person marking me doesn't know when I'm going to throw or how far, except for how much I wind up. So if I have my wrist like this, I'm ready to just throw it. I don't have to telegraph the wind-up part of that if it's a short pass. So that's kind of neat. The other thing that this does is adds a ton of spin. Guaranteed, you're going to get more spin on the disc by preloading your wrist, pre-cocking your wrist. And it also kind of gets your wrist into gets the disc in relation to your forearm nice and on plane and in line. So I like all of those features of the pre-cocked wrist. Give it a try, see if it gives you more spin.
So next kind of point is maybe try pre-cocking your wrist, so pulling the disc towards your forearm as you would do as if you're throwing, but beforehand. Yeah, I'm not sure about when he says using it during a game, because it makes it quite tricky to do a forehand if you're trying to keep your arm like pre-cocked the whole time, but definitely for pool situations it could be a bit helpful.
That straight spine, but we also want to get an IO angle, an inside out angle on the backhand pull. So how do we do that? Do we bend at the spine to get that angle? No, bend at the hips. And this is going to be from a huck position or a huck stance, but if I'm throwing this way and I step out, I don't want to bend my back and throw, because now I'm not using an efficient axis of rotation. I want to bend at the hips. So back stays straight, bend at the hips, and now I can turn more, I can also wobble. I can turn more efficiently around that straight back. So that, whether you're hucking or pulling, you want to keep your spine straight, you want to bend at the hips to get that IO release angle.
Cool. So next one, thinking about what you're doing with your back, and you're trying to get IO on the disc, so leaning over, using your hips. Which may be obvious, but I always find that sometimes I don't do it quite properly. So making sure you're not hurting your back at all by bending at the hips instead of kind of bending over at your back.
So Rob says, try to get your head rotating more and almost looking directly behind you in that wind-up phase of the pull or of the huck. When pulling, you're
Cool. So that was a quick one, which was looking behind you as you do it. Which I think people would probably do anyway, but really thinking about keeping your head in line with the rest of your body and therefore looking back could kind of help it not hurt your neck or your back and get a bit further. And this final tip, he goes through the X step.
You're going to get a little extra distance by performing what's known as an X step, and that's where you leap into the throw, and in the air, while your upper body is counter-rotating your lower body, you're going to find your non-dominant foot, so for me my left foot, is going to come in behind my right foot, and then it's going to land first, then my right foot, and then I'm going to execute the pull, and that's going to add plenty of distance if you can do that explosively. So you don't want that process to be a lethargic or slow movement. You want to really explode into that X step and try to use your lower body to help torque your upper body.
Cool. So that's kind of the last one, is kind of the X step. So putting one foot behind the other as you go to really get as much of a kind of a whip through. And this last one I'm not really going through, but he says to kind of lift your back foot. But if you're going to do the X step thing anyway, you do it anyway. So the kind of the main points for the whole thing is there's no space between your disc and the disc and your palm. You could try and pre-cock your wrist to kind of get a little bit more spin on it. You're trying to throw an IO throw, so inside out, so kind of at this angle, so that you can get it as far as possible. You want to bend at your hips, not with your back, and you want to rotate your head with your whole body, and finally trying out this kind of X step type thing. So that's kind of an overview of what pulls maybe should look like. And now we're just going to look at some different examples, and some of them are like really good, maybe don't need much improvement. Some of them maybe we could see what we could improve on them. So any of those kind of 6 points. So it's quite hard to see if someone has a space between the disc and their palm, but the rest of them. Cool. So look at this first one.
Revolution, who has traveled here. And
so we've got Elizabeth Mascara on the disc, who is definitely a very good puller. And we can watch her do her pull and then watch it again maybe.
And is holding a current roster of 15, whereas Radiance with a full roster of 21 players. So in speaking with a few Radiance players before the game, they mentioned that it was part.
So she does a pretty good pull now. You can see when she runs up.
A current roster.
The X step she does when she runs up. So if I slow it down a little bit. Oh, this is going to be so slow. She tells her team to move back so they're not offside. But she goes forwards and then her foot goes behind, which is the kind of the X step type thing. So if we go back, she's got quite a lot of IO, but maybe an improvement could be that she has slightly more IO so that she gets it even further. But she does throw it quite a long way, and there's definitely some wind because the disc kind of goes up and down. So that's an example of a pretty good, pretty top tier pull technique going on from her. Cool. And so this one is kind of a step on. So maybe she didn't have enough roll there. This person, if we watch his pull.
Early. One of top scorers. They do not have free.
He really uses all of that kind of roll curve that, the IO that he's got on his throw, so that it rolls and goes a really long way. So that's really good.
So early.
And then he also does this X step, and you see right at the end his back foot comes up. So another example of probably this is like a top tier pull to kind of try and copy in the future. Cool. So now we had two ones which are kind of like probably examples. We have one here. I don't know if Dan, can you make a poll if you're listening? Yeah, Dan is listening. if Polbot likes us, could you make a poll asking what people think needs to be improved in this? So the things that we could say need to be improved could be the pre-cock of the wrist, but that might be a bit hard to say. So the inside out angle, kind of bending at the hips, the kind of X step going into it. So I think those are three kind of ones. And then there's also rotate head with the body, but also another thing which I think is a bit hard to see in these ones. So if we just watch this clip.
Helping the players out, making sure everything can get resolved quickly.
And the Japanese will play offense again.
So if we watch it again, I'll slow it down a bit. It's not a particularly bad pull, but because it's quite windy at this time, that maybe he could have done something to help that.
Sure everything.
So we've got 5 people on, 3 people on precock, 4 people on the IO angle, and 2 people on bending at the hips, and 1 person on the rotate head with body. So if we watch it again and see if there's some things that you could do. So yeah, definitely one thing maybe that he could look even further back as he does it, because there's he doesn't look as far back. He kind of keeps his head a bit looking forwards, like here. His head isn't looking straight back with the top of his body, so he could put some more strength through his neck maybe. Yeah, definitely could improve that slightly. IO angle, yeah, I think this is probably was my main point, was the fact that his kind of IO angle isn't particularly good, and because the wind is going really hard across pitch, it makes it even trickier to kind of keep that angle, and therefore you have to put more of it on it. So yeah, bending at the hips, if we look. Yeah, it's a bit hard to tell where exactly he's bending, but he's got a bit of a bend there, but maybe along with the IO angle, bending at the hips can kind of help that. Cool. And pre-cocking the wrist. Yeah, you can see here that he's not really got it, and he kind of maybe does it there, but not to kind of the same extent of really having like all the way really cocked, and then as you're going through pulling it. So an example of maybe want to go a bit better. Cool. So this is the same match, the same wind direction, we just have someone else who's pulling. So we can see the wind is going really really fast kind of across pitch, and we see the difference in kind of pulling technique between these two people, and maybe where this person does it maybe a bit better at some points.
They're trying to take it back to basics, which I think is an excellent idea as the stakes get high, as everything is ready, and the first pull will go up and the game will commence.
That's right. They just came to play some hard frisbee, take home a win.
Cool. So in this one, instead of kind of the disc kind of falling over because there's not enough IO, you can see that there's put so much IO on it that it floats really nicely. So if we slow it down, and we can see if he does it any better than the person before him.
It's ready.
Ooh.
And the first pull will go up and the game will commence.
Cool. So if we do again, if there's anything that this person maybe could have done a bit better. So
as everything is ready and the first pull.
So he gets a good leg up. You can see his leg go up. Sounds really weird. His leg goes up nicely at the end, which he gets lots of power through it, and his IO angle looks really good, but maybe some other things. So we've got 3 votes for precocking your wrist. We've got 2 votes for the X step. So if we look back, yeah, you can see there that he's not really doing it at all, and you can see the continuous space in between the disc and his wrist. So maybe he could have got a little bit more spin if he did that. And then the X step, yeah, his X step is a bit more jumpy, which might be like what he prefers. But maybe if he did kind of the obvious like 3 steps that you kind of do, he could have got a bit more power. Cool, so that's an example of how he kind of maybe improved it from the person who did it before because of his lots of IO, and kind of example of why you also have to think about the wind a lot when you're pulling. So you have to put even more IO on it then, so that it doesn't become flat and then just fall over, which is what happened to the American in the first clip. Cool. So we'll watch this one, and then can anybody see? There's not exactly what went wrong with the pull, but kind of things around the pull.
Left side of the field.
I think they might say actually.
Sit in the breeze.
Looking pretty nice.
And an offside call.
Yeah, so this is the example of when I think this person's pull technique is really nice. We can watch it straight up. He's got that good X step. He looks to be bending at the hips. His leg goes up at the back. Really nice IO. It floats for a long time, comes down. But either he didn't tell his teammates how long he was going to pull for, or count them down, or he was pulling a bit slowly, so he started pulling and then was doing it a bit slowly. Who knows? A whole host of things can go wrong, but it's offside, which means that everything has to reset, and it's a lot worse. So it doesn't make as much of a difference for kind of uni level maybe, but say if you got to like a nationals match, maybe like the final at nationals, or if you're playing tour, because there's lots of people on the sideline for those events, I think offside would be called more frequently, especially if people feel like they're more involved with like different clubs. So definitely making sure that your teammates have a countdown or lots of space, so that people aren't offside is important. And this was in the final, so the mixed final at U24s, which isn't good. Does anybody know what the rule is? You can type in the chat box. Maybe, surely, I think Ollie would probably know this, as he's now pro at rules with all of the Instagram things. If it's offside twice, what happens then? Oh, Iona's typing. Dan's typing. Give up, go home. Dan is still typing. In the meantime, we'll look at this clip. So, this is an example of a nice pull done by, well, we'll watch it through and then we can talk about it afterwards. Cool, so we'll go back again. It's a bit hard to see the technique in this thing, but I think it's got a good float on it. It looks like to go a long way. We can slow it down. We can maybe see more of the technique going on here. Mama, I made it. Yeah. Got Dan's back leg going up. Maybe could be, not sure it's coming from as much from the hips. Looks like quite a lot of bendy back going on. So maybe something to improve. But I think one of the main things that could be improved here is if we look at where the pull's gonna land. So this dude just gets it, and it looks like it could land out. And by pulling from that sideline, aiming for the same sideline, there's like a higher chance it's going to go out. So if Dan, instead of aiming for kind of this bit here, if he aimed all the way over here, and kind of threw it straight there, there's more chance that it would kind of come to the sideline chap 1000 IQ. True, but it's much better to always pull in than be able to have them brick it. Bricking that means they get to set up their offense a lot quicker. You don't really get to put any defensive pressure on it. They get to move the disc a third up the pitch, which is pretty terrible. So making sure you're always trying to pull in is always a good idea. So yeah, that's one thing to note, that if you're, so say if you're right-handed, then if you're standing on the left side of the pitch, when you pull, try and aim for your right corner so that you kind of always, you've got like the biggest amount of error. And then vice versa, if you're left-handed, then on the right side maybe, and aiming for the left corner. Cool. We've got another pretty nice pretty nice pull going on here. YouTube's not liking me. Hello? So if we just watch Adam do his pull. So he's got a nice eye on it, floats and goes a long way. If we go back to the pull, what could be improved going on here? So if I slow it down. Oh, we got one person for X step. 2 people for X step. I don't know if you can slow it down even more. Whoop. I'll turn this volume off, it's horrible. How many times this video has to be used before it counts as bullying Cambridge? Well, there's not that many videos on the on the YouTube channel, because we didn't play like the whole of last season, obviously. So yeah, lots lots of YouTubes, lots of this game have been used. So yeah, definitely I think the X step could be improved, because he X steps actually the wrong foot comes forward. So if we watch there, that it should be that his right foot goes behind, but actually his right foot comes forwards. But really nice kind of bringing his leg up at the end. We've got bending at the hips. Let's have a look. Yeah, I think a little bit more bending at the hips could help as well, most definitely. And rotate his head with his body. Doesn't look too bad. Maybe just then he could look a little bit further back as well. But yeah, definitely. Cool. Next clip. Oh. This needs to go. This is me pulling. You can critique my pull. So if we just watch it. Definitely stuff to be improved in this. So if we go back and I slow it down a little bit. Get swoller. Thanks, Dan. So if we go back to the start of it. So if we look at it and I do it super slow, what kind of goes not as good? So I think I don't really have an X step. My foot doesn't come behind really, which definitely could be improved. Something that I don't really do at the moment. So definitely be practicing that at the weekend. I don't really look back. You see my face is still looking forwards at this point. So making sure I'm looking with the whole of my body definitely could be improved. Get swoller. Yeah, I've hurt my wrist at the moment, so it's get swoller has been put on hold, but also another thing to do. 3, bending at the hips. Let's see. Yeah, definitely think I could bend a little bit more at the hips. I come into it a bit straight at this point, and then I kind of bend over. So that could be a bit better. So yeah, a couple of things that I definitely could improve there. So I think all of these things are really good to kind of if you have pulled in a game before, or for this weekend, maybe if you go out to doing the interactive session, try like filming yourself and seeing what things you do well or not, or find a clip of yourself in any of these games of like you pulling, and see if you can look at what you didn't do very well. I think it's quite interesting. Cool. So we have a Cambridge woman. Sorry to smash smash on Cambridge, but what stuff could be improved from this bull? But this is kind of starter. So say if you're something new, kind of this could be where your start would be. But you can see that it's a lot harder to generate more power if you don't have kind of your run up to your pull. So if we slow this down. So making sure that especially when you start pulling, I think making sure that you try and practice getting that like big IO shape on the throws. So here is more just like a static throw, which I think kind of, especially once you've started and you're like, oh yeah, I can throw long, it's fine. I can also pull as well. But you can like increase the amount of your pull so far by kind of moving a bit. So doing that X step or like running up to it. And then getting that big IO on it, because normally you've got a defender in your way and it's really hard to do it. But you can really, because you don't have anybody there, it's really easy to kind of get that big IO in it, which means that it will kind of fly further, because you can get it up higher and therefore it sits in the air. Cool. And our final one. It's loading. Word is not responding. No. I'm sad. Maybe this is our final one then. Doesn't look like Word's liking me. Oh, there you go. So this is an example of This is an example of one where I think someone's thought about all of the different things, and then the final bit is just getting that big IO. So I'm just trying to hammer it home, basically, that getting like a big IO on these pulls, which feels really unnatural, especially if you're new to them, is something which can kind of make your pulls go a lot further.
It was a goal.
Because this person obviously is great and can throw a long way, but because they haven't put any IO on it, the disc is only ever going to get to a height that they kind of throw it to straight. And if this person put IO on it, it goes up and then it settles flat once it gets up there, and then will kind of fly from there. So you can get so much more distance just by kind of adding that big IO on it. But it's not a bad pull. Another reason to add IOs means that you get more time to have kind of the people get down there. So if this was to the same length, but something which kind of floated a bit more, it would mean that people can kind of get down there and get the force on, etc. Cool. So yeah, that was a very brief and it's kind of all the same points, but making sure to kind of do all of the basics. So no space between your disc and your palm. So really getting it kind of in line with your body, kind of to pre-cock that wrist. I've never really tried doing that, but that person in the video thought that it was really handy and kind of a good tip to use. So trying that, getting a big IO inside out angle, making sure you're bending at your hips instead of kind of the back instead, otherwise you might hurt something when you're doing it. Rotate your head all the way back with your body, and then practicing kind of the X step. So our interactive session this weekend is going to be some kind of drills and stuff to do with this. So we're going to be practicing kind of doing the X step and then doing some pulls at the end of the session. So hopefully see some of you guys doing that, and yeah, I think that's everything.